of the Department of Planning for your commitment and your dedication to the communities of Pikesville. So for the past meetings, I have been in the background and I have been listening and observing, and I see a group of amazing, dedicated, passionate, and proud individuals all working towards the same vision. So which is the revitalization of Pikesville. So when we convene the committee, it was to implement the goals of the action plan. And we are hoping tonight that by finalizing the voting protocols, we can get back on track and refocus on addressing the goals of the PRAP. I know the Department of Planning went to staff change the past months, and I apologize that you had to witness it, but we are lucky to have Alex, who is a dedicated planner and who is eager to just work with you all in transforming Pikesville. So let's find the solution tonight. We can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gone. So like I said, we do have the voting members discussion and vote tonight, and that is the priority. I know we have the worksheets on there as well. If we're not able to get to them, that's okay. We can get to it at another meeting. I am looking forward to hearing everyone on the voting matter, and I just want to remind everyone to be respectful of one another and considerate of the time we have tonight to discuss that. So I'll now pass things over to Larry, Chair of the Organization Subcommittee, so that we can start that discussion.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, everybody. And excuse me, I'm having a little bit of laryngitis. So I'm going to make my portion hopefully short and sweet. Just representing the recommendation that was emailed out by Alex, and I'm going to put this in the chat too. Most of you, if not all of you, probably saw the email from Alex last week. Restating the recommendation that have voting members of the Action Plan Committee be representatives or alternates for one of the 11 organizations on the NPC, and that individuals who do not represent an organization can serve as non-voting members on the APC. Since Alex sent that out, there's been a lot of robust dialogue via email with some of the members of the APC. There are several folks that don't necessarily agree with this and would like individuals to have voting rights too. So there are some other, there's been some dialogue going on via email with some of the members of the APC. And there was also a request that the recommendation be amended before it comes to the full APC, but we decided not to do that because there wasn't time to reconvene the organization subcommittee. And also we weren't having a discussion with everybody on the APC. It was just a smaller group. So that's the recommendation right now. Of course, nothing is in stone. The reason we came up with that recommendation is because we thought that based on looking at other coalitions that we've been parts of, we wanted to make sure that the votes were representative of broad constituencies. But of course, there are different opinions about what that would look like. We are going to, the committee did several months ago adopt Robert's Rules of Order for voting, though we don't have a chair, so it makes it a little complicated to do that. But as best we can, we're hoping that the committee can stick to Robert's Rules of Order with motions, seconds, discussion after the second, an opportunity to make a motion to amend if people like, and the other components of what makes up Robert's Rules of Order. So, and Mel, just give me 1 second and then I'm almost done. And then once basically, that's all I had to say about this. And I just wanted to open it up for discussion. And I see that Mel has his hand up.
Thanks, Larry. Just a point of clarification. I know you mentioned Robert's Rules of Orders, and then also you mentioned that there would be no amendments. Typically, Robert's Rules of Orders kind of allow for a friendly amendment, and I would trust that perhaps you might be willing, and the chair, I guess chair in this case being Alex, would be okay, according to Robert's Rules of Order in the usual fashion, accept a friendly amendment and certainly seeking a collegial agreement.
Yeah, perhaps I misspoke. What I was trying to say was that it does allow for amendments. Yeah, and that people can make a motion to, once a motion has been made, people can still make a motion to amend that motion. You know, I'm not an expert in Robert's Rules, but yeah, amendments are definitely part of Robert's Rules of Order.
Larry, may I?
Yeah, Alex, do you want to facilitate this? I don't need to or who, I don't need to be the person to call on people, or I can, whatever's easiest.
Alex, may I make a comment?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Ruth.
Thanks.
Thanks, Larry.
So, I think, Robert's rules does allow for motions and amendments, but this was always, first of all, I don't know if we're there yet. We don't have a chair or anything like that. And this has always been presented by the org committee as a recommendation, not a motion. And the other piece of it was we never discussed amendments. We discussed the fact that there would be, comments and feedback, and that if this recommendation does not pass, that the org committee would take it back and work on it based on all of this feedback. We've never ever talked about it being treated like a motion with amendments and voting on amendments or anything like that. We said if it didn't pass, we would listen to all the discussion and take it back and work on it and revise it and try to be sensitive and bring forward another recommendation. Now,
Okay.
Michelle or Alex or Larry or Lynn, if I misunderstood, whoever else was in those discussions for more than a month, if I misunderstood, please correct me on that.
Sounded like you were saying two different things, but okay.
Well, I'm asking the people on the
Yeah.
core committee if my understanding was correct and if we ever discussed amendments versus taking it back and working on it in the org committee.
Go
So,
ahead, Michelle. Oh, or Larry, go for it.
Sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, I would say go ahead. I didn't see you guys unmute, so go
Oh.
ahead, Larry, and then I'll see if.
I'll try to make this quick. It hadn't been discussed thoroughly in the organization subcommittee, but I just want to reaffirm that the organization subcommittee doesn't have authority to direct the APC on what does or doesn't get discussed, what motions may or may not be put forward. So we can recommend that we take it back. If that recommendation isn't accepted, we can suggest that we take it back to committee and work out another recommendation. But we don't, as a committee, I've never heard anyone give our committee the authority to say, we're not going to have a motion, we're not going to have amendments. We just don't have that authority as far as I understand it. So that's why I laid out using Robert's Rules of Order and allowing for motions and amendments and all of that, because again, no one has given us authority to dictate to the APC what we can or cannot do in terms of discussion, voting, motions, etc.
Okay, so do we want to then continue the discussion on the recommendation of the organization subcommittee? I see that there's some hands that are raised here, and then we can see if we do get to a motion and to a vote following that discussion. Okay, so I believe Neville, your hand was raised next, so why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself? You'll have to unmute yourself, Neville. There you go.
Robert's rules is pretty clear on how the meeting should be conducted. And I'd like to know if what is a recommendation is what you are actually proposing is a motion. And that motion is that the voting members of the Action Plan Committee must be representatives or alternatives for one of the 11 organizations of the APC. Individuals who do not represent an organization can serve as non-voting members of APC. Is that the motion that you are proposing? Because I would like to have that as a motion. I'd like to try to vote it down, but I'd like to have it as a motion first, that we can proceed according to Robert's rules.
So I don't believe Larry presented it as a motion. Rather, he just stated that was the recommendation of the organization subcommittee, and that's where we
Now,
are.
I want to know if it's a motion.
No one's made a motion, but if somebody would like to make a motion, they can. The recommendation is not a motion.
Okay, do we discuss it first, or does the motion have to be?
No. The motion has to be proposed, and you have to have a seconder.
Fine.
You can then
I
have
don't-
discussion.
I don't agree with this format. I don't think that this is a binding vote. It was never discussed in the org committee that this would be a binding vote. It was discussed that if it didn't pass, it would be taken back. But with all that said, if someone has to make a motion, Lynn or I can make the motion.
Okay, I can make a motion that that's our recommendation, that that's how we vote. And do I need to say anything else?
Well, to restate the motion that, I mean, it's the motion that that Neville just read, and you're making the motion, and I'm seconding it, but I'm sort of seconding it sort of under protest, because this is not the format that we discussed for the last 2 months, basically, in the org committee. So I feel like this is being, you know, actually sprung on us and imposed on us. This was never intended, from my understanding, to be a binding vote. And I think would be it might pass, which is great. And in that case, it was meant to stand. And if it didn't pass, the org committee was to take it back. That's sort of heads you win, tails you lose. But I do think that that this is not the format we discussed. And I, you know, even though we're being asked to make a motion, I feel like that's not what we intended to do or discussed. So I could second it, but then I'm being part of this process, which
Oh,
is
God.
leading us down a road.
Oh, God.
Well, I'm
Well,
just
I'd
describing.
like to have a
I'm just
motion on this
describing
thing, Ruth.
Exactly. I know you want a motion, but we
Yeah,
never.
because I want to vote it down.
But
I think it
I know
stinks.
you do. I know you do. But we never, in the org committee, we never discussed putting this forward as a motion that would be binding in any way.
This was a vote. This meeting is supposed to be a vote,
I think
and we're deciding to try to get something established
Yeah.
so that we can move forward.
All right, thank
We've
you,
been
Neville.
discussing
Thank you,
this
Ruth.
for
I
a
know there was
long
confusion.
time,
I
Ruth.
do
In
think
the
we should try to
organization
keep our
subcommittee.
tone collegial and
Yes.
kind to each other. I'm just describing the process that took place over the last more than a month in the org committee. And I think the other people in the org committee, I'm describing what happened. So this is a little different than what we said, what we discussed all this time. So I'm a little concerned about the path that we're taking right now.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Ruth. I know that there was a bit of confusion in the organization subcommittee and how this would be presented here today. We did exchange by email today, and you know, Larry being chair did remind us all that we did adopt Robert's Rules of Order as the APC. So, you know, my suggestion is that we do go forward with the motion in this case. If we weren't going to do that, I think we would have to have another discussion about that. And it seems like at this point, we do want to, you know, vote on it. That's why everyone is here. I think people want to discuss it as well. And I'm looking forward to that discussion. So, you know, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but if you're okay with seconding it, you know, going forward with that, then we can do that and see where this goes, if that's okay.
Does anyone else want to second the motion? I will second the motion.
Thank you, Ruth. So now I think we can have a moment for debate, if I'm not wrong, when it comes to Robert's Rules of Order. So if anyone wants to, you know, share any input on the recommendation and the motion that was put forward, you can do so now. Is that why everyone has their hands up? Should I follow that order? Okay, wonderful. So I think Tom, your hand was next, and then I'll go to Mel and Deb and Neville. I saw you just raised your hand, and we can take it in that order. So go ahead, Tom.
I would first like to express a very strong discomfort with the fact that we have had at least 5 weeks worth of email blizzarding, making comments about this motion, this organizational structure, this voting structure that was about to be proposed. Many of us, myself included, have made strong points that the concept is unacceptable for one reason or another, and have proposed a number of alternatives. And I guess the only conclusion I can come to is either those emails on those recommendations weren't read, which I doubt because they were too numerous to be ignored, or they were simply ignored. And finally, I got a response that, well, it's too late to change it. We're going to go forward and then we can have a discussion. So if there is a level of discomfort or annoyance on the part of myself, let's just speak for myself, it is based on the fact that we have been proposing, and many of us have been proposing and making comments and expressing our feelings about what was being proposed, and were simply ignored. That's not a very good promise to then say, well, in that case, if you don't like it, we'll go back and discuss it some more. Because I have a very strong feeling that the subcommittee, hard as they may have discussed and hard as they may have worked, were not really interested in input. So it's not a good start. On the topic itself, why am I so opposed to votes by organization, is because we are volunteers. Those of us who belong to a community organization and have a board that they are involved in cannot go back in the middle of a vote and say, I can't vote on this because I need to find out if my organization approves. I represent PCC, but I also represent myself as a voting individual on this committee. And that is the appropriate position that I'm in. And I want to get my vote as a volunteer, a co-volunteer with all the other people in this room who have put so much effort, historical effort and current effort, into making Pikesville better. And I wish we could get on with that work rather than deciding who is going to vote on one issue or another. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. Go ahead, Mel.
I couldn't concur more with Neville and Tom in the general thrust of what they're speaking about. And it certainly has been going on for months. This assignment was created roughly 5 months ago, and we're still here. There has been a step that the folks who have been participating in this effort for now almost a year will be the ones who will vote on who gets to vote, which is about the only logical thing that can be done except by edict. So that's a good step. The flaws in the proposal, albeit well done. I mean, the proposal is well done, and it is hard work, and it is diligent, and is sincere, has flaws. Those flaws have been pointed out by a number of people, myself, Tom, that I've read, and otherwise not in print. Those flaws have been pointed out to the organizational subcommittee chair, and there has been no adjustment. It seems that the discussion has been full and detailed and sincere from representatives of the Action Plan Committee. And it seems to me prudent and logical, since there is a good bit of opposition to the proposal as it has been put forward, is to send this back to the organizational subcommittee to take those considerations that have been offered by a number of people, not just a couple, and not just by me, but a number of people, and take those back and try to adjust that recommendation to reflect those concerns, particularly the concerns that were centered around some of what Tom alluded to, with a variety of people representing formally organizations, and it hamstringing the action plan committee of having to go back to their respective organizations and so forth and so on. Another concern that's huge is the elimination, as this motion is implemented, of folks who have worked for up to 44 years on behalf of Pikesville, some of which actually authored more than one plan. In fact, a couple of people who don't have votes, according to that proposal, authored about 80% of the current plan that you're working on. The elimination of those folks, and I can name them, Billy Chase, myself, Arlene Rosenberg, and Jason Roth, to name four that come to mind. To eliminate those folks who have been working on these efforts diligently, sincerely, productively for a long time, to eliminate those folks from having a vote is simply wrong. And I would trust that the organizational subcommittee can take these concerns now formally put on the record back to their committee, their subcommittee, and adjust their recommendation accordingly. So I would support the comments that have just been made by Tom and Neville on that vein. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Deb, if you want to go ahead. Your hand was raised. I don't know if I had you down. Okay.
I don't want to keep saying the same thing that everybody else has said. To address what Tom said, there is a serious problem, and I think I've got Larry's issue. Laryngitis on this call is not a good thing. We joined as individuals. We didn't join as groups. These are social organizations. These are not formal organizations. Arlene decided to form a neighborhood association. She chose the boundaries and then said everybody within those boundaries are members. I don't know that those people really regard themselves as members and believe that we should be speaking for them on things like this. If they don't perceive themselves as members, how can we talk on their behalf? So I am violently against those organizations being voting members. I think it also, by cutting it down to 11, is it? You're going to lose some volunteers. We're not going to feel like we have skin in the game. We're going to start looking at our people, and we're going to say, hey, look at that association. Nobody ever shows up. Well, that's not right. So we're just causing fighting amongst ourselves. If we try and vote as a group of individuals, we're on equal footing. We can contribute. And the last thing I want to say is I don't think any of us understand what the organization committee is about. I think they've done a wonderful job of putting something together out of nothing, but there is no communication. They are a subcommittee. There are several other subcommittees. We need to know how we can have input to the organization committee and how we can stop. It's sort of like I think I said to Alex, it's like a north versus south thing. We're taking sides. And that just defeats the whole purpose of trying to work together. That's it.
Thank you, Deb. Neville, if you want to go ahead.
Robert's rules are very clear on how we can handle this problem. You propose a motion, you second the motion, you have discussion. If the motion is voted on and goes positive, then it is accepted. If it goes negative, it gets rejected. And a second motion is presented. I would like to have a motion based on what was recommended. I'd like it to be voted on. I personally would like to see it turned down. And then I would like to propose another motion. And that motion, I hope, will take into account the discussion that has been held by email by a number of people, and I'd like to see if that motion is accepted. If that motion is not accepted, we can have another motion or we can have amendments, but let's just plow through this process. It's very well organized, very well defined. a lot of precedent on this thing. I would like to propose that we have a motion based on the recommendation that has already been seconded and discussed. Let's vote on it. We've had discussion on it. Let's vote on it. See if it passes. If it passes, fine. If it doesn't pass, I will present another motion.
Thank you, Neville. We're still having the discussion for that motion, so we'll continue with that since I still see some hands raised. You, of course, can propose another motion, but as we mentioned, the organization subcommittee is ready to propose an alternative recommendation based on how the vote goes tonight and based on what everyone is saying here tonight. So that is, another way to move forward. And we can then bring that to the committee at the next meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that that's also an option that we can pursue. So next I have Kristen, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Yes, so a couple points. I understand where the organization committee is coming from, where you want the communities to come together and join forces and have their input into this. But the fact of the matter is they haven't shown up. There isn't representatives from, say, Dumbarton or Subbrook Park. So it would be they would be voting if they even had a vote, and they have no idea what's going on. It's the voting members that are liable for whatever we come up with. So it really, and some other points of view, like Deb has brought up, where we should be personally liable rather than speaking on behalf of our entire community, because it could cause a lot of friction. And it does make sense to give some weight to the people who have shown up, who have put their time and sweat into this meeting after meeting, and give them weight for it. The second part of this is looking at what our actual worksheets are. We're all kind of on the same page. We all want a better Pikesville. It might be pretty easy just for the chairs that get together, come up with some hybrid worksheet that kind of satisfies everyone. And that would be, everyone would be able to vote on that because we all came in together and kind of did one big hybrid. That's just another thought. There's a lot of duplicating we could do that, that would be another way to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Lynn, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to say a couple of things. First, that we had pretty animated discussion about everything, including everything everybody asked about and suggested. So I don't want anyone thinking they were ignored or left out or we just didn't care. We talked in great detail about all sorts of possibilities and at least 3, if not 4 different ways of voting. So I just would like to say that to make sure everybody knows that we didn't ignore anyone, we didn't dismiss anyone and any ideas. We talked about them all. And one of the things for myself personally that maybe I didn't understand this correctly, but I was under the impression that part of the formation of PrAP through Baltimore County was that the organizations that were listed were like sponsors of PrAP or something. I don't know what word to use, but were in support of PrAP and were actively participating. I was not aware of the fact that, because I'm new to all this, you guys have been around a lot longer than me. And so I thought that the majority of you were representing one of those groups. And so that's why it seemed logical to me that a representative of each group who has been in discussion, maybe taking the stuff back to that we're discussing in PrAP and taking it back to your organization and saying, okay, this is what we're discussing. What do you guys think? So that there is a true representative from the community, because we would like, at least in the subcommittee, we would like to be considered as legitimate and trustworthy as possible, and we don't want people thinking we're not representing the entire community, because we'd like to be representing the entire community. And at least that's why that's the conclusion I came to in agreeing with the idea that one representative from each organization should vote. So I wasn't trying to disempower anyone. I was trying to be as inclusive as possible in community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Darren, you can go ahead.
So I think I have a question in general just about the structure of the organization as a whole, and ultimately any recommendations that we come up with as an organization, how are those going to be adopted? And I think before, I guess I'll leave it as an open-ended question, or if anybody wants to answer it, then please feel free. But ultimately, it seems to me, voting on how to organize ourselves, when ultimately it's not even 100% clear to me how any decisions that we come to will be ultimately adopted by the county, if at all. And so I think we have to kind of take a step back and look at the authority that this entire community has to actually make changes and how those will be implemented. Because the way it seems to me is that when we do finally come up with recommendations on what we feel Pikesville should look like in the future, it's going to be up to county planning to make those decisions and actually bring them to fruition. And so if that's the case, then shouldn't it just be up to the county to decide how much input they want from volunteers in making these decisions and how all of this should be structured? I mean, ultimately, I think that the county could just tell us like what they expect from a group of volunteers, and then just work on that recommendation or expectation. So I don't know. It's just my 2 cents, but I feel like I'm kind of confused by the structure of all of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Darren. I can't answer that question for you tonight, but I've noted it and I appreciate it. So if we can move on to Shelley, then I saw your hand was raised.
Yes. Well, I think Darren raises a really good question. And I kind of am on the same page as Lynn in that since this is a committee that's been convened by Baltimore County, it's not just a collection of volunteers. It seems like we should be trying to make it as representative as possible, which to me means that the organizational structure is really important, because each organization represents a lot more people than just the individual who comes to the meetings. That's the whole nature of representative democracy. And it would seem like, given that the county is funding this, that we want to get as many voices heard as possible. And the way to do that is through organizations, not through just the loudest individuals who happen to come to the meeting. I think always there should be room for people to express themselves, but in terms of like making voting recommendations for how money should be spent, I think it's more fair to have it be people who represent organizations in the community. And you could probably have other organizations join as you go along. I mean, Pikesville is a very diverse community, and to really be representative, I think we should be doing everything we can to bring those other organizations and other voices in. So I support the motion.
Thank you, Shelley. Howard, you had your hand raised. I see it's not raised anymore. I'm not sure if you put it down or if you still want to say something. If you do, you can go ahead now. Oh, 1 second. We just have to unmute you. It won't be long.
Myself there. I too want to support, like Shelley said it so well, representative democracy, and have the organizations have a voting member. Mel and I recognized 10 years ago when we started this, I think it's about right, and went to each of the organizations and made presentations on behalf of our ideas about Pikesville, and they were very responsive, very receptive to it. And to think that they should not be included now is offensive to me. If an organization does not have the structure or the people who care enough about it to respond, then they should get their act together and I would be glad to help with those. And I'm sure there are others who would help with organizations to organize themselves so that they have real input into the whole process of revitalizing Pikesville. Obviously, there's very strong feelings about having individuals vote as well, and I suspect that the motion is either going to be defeated or amended so that some of those individuals who have worked on this for a long time, Mel in particular, should not be denied a vote. I don't look forward to the discussion about individual members who can or cannot vote because that can be offensive and unfortunate and divisive. And I hope if we come to that, that we can avoid the divisiveness which has occurred as a result of the email barrage that we have experienced over the last month. But please don't eliminate the organizations that are so vital to Pikesville. They deserve to be voted. I represent Pine Ridge, and we have, I don't know exactly how many members, over 100 homes, and so probably there are 3 people in each home, or on the average, I represent maybe 300 people. They should not be eliminated. I'm surprised to hear that Dumbarton and Subbrook Park don't have representatives, and because they're both organized and can certainly designate representatives as voting members, and I think we should proceed in that manner.
Thank you, Howard. Go on to Arlene because we haven't heard from you yet, and then we can go back to the people that have already spoken once. So go ahead, Arlene.
Hi. I feel, as Deb has said, and a number of other people, that we should vote as individuals. As a community organization, we've had some issues with meeting as a board and then going to vote on something, and then people coming back and saying they weren't informed on our decision. So every time we make a decision, we need to go back and ask our board if it's okay. We can't just make a decision for them. That's my concern. That's why I think it would be better to work as an individual than as a than me representing Pikesville Township. I would represent them if I could. Every time I had to make a decision, I'd have to go back and meet with the board. So that's my main concern, and it has happened to us. So you know, we're wary of that. I don't know how we can write this up to say, you know, individuals and organizations, and have it be, you know, work together. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. Mel, if you want to go ahead.
Good discussion, and it's put on the record, as I indicated earlier, that there are a number of people who have a number of concerns. First thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank Howard for his kind words. Yes, we started this 10 years ago, Howard. 2 people aspirationally calling ourselves 1,000 Friends of Pikesville, and lo and behold, here we are with thousands of people really involved, and it's quite remarkable. So I thank you, Howard, for those kind words, and it just simply wouldn't be right to proceed precisely with the recommendation that the subcommittee has put forward, albeit diligent and sincere, and Lynn arrived at with the best of intentions. It's seriously flawed. So you have a few ways of moving forward. You can, this has been moved and seconded. It has now had a robust discussion. So you could theoretically have an amendment. I assure you there are a couple that might be made. Vote on those amendments, see where that goes, see where this whole thing goes, or encourage the chair of the subcommittee to recognize that my count is roughly about 8 people of the folks who are here have spoken in opposition in one fashion or another of all the details of the subcommittee's proposal. So I would encourage the chair, for lack of a better word, table this motion and take it back to his subcommittee, considering all the input that has been offered, and come back with an adjusted recommendation. I think you can probably come up with something that would have some hybrid, as Kristen kind of indicated, of some organizations that have been active represent as being a voting member as an organization, other individuals, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there's a way. So I would encourage the chair in the most collegial fashion to take this back to the subcommittee, and I'd urge him to do it right now. Thank you.
Can I chime in, Alex, since Mel's addressing me?
Excuse me, I have had my hand up for, through 3 or 4 different people.
Okay, Ruth, I'm going in order that I'm writing down, so don't worry, you'll have your chance to speak. I do want to give Larry a chance to respond since he was directly addressed by Mel's comment. So if you don't mind, we'll go to Larry and then we'll go straight to you. Okay, Ruth?
So of course, I don't have the authority to table a discussion for the APC. Now, if somebody wants to make a motion to call the question, they're more than welcome to do that. Mel, if
You could theoretically withdraw, Larry. You could theoretically withdraw. Just that's okay.
Withdraw.
You could.
Withdraw what? I'm sorry.
You could withdraw for now and take it back to subcommittee. You could theoretically do that.
Withdraw what? The motion?
Yeah.
I didn't make the motion. So I guess whoever made. So the person that made the motion would have to withdraw, as far as I understand it.
Can I at least make a comment on this, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
Thank you. So first of all, Mel and I, a stop clock is right twice a day. And Mel and I are probably in general agreement on this, that the most orderly way to do this is to do what the subcommittee had always telegraphed that it would do, and that is to, if there was this much discussion and disagreement and input, that we would take it back and work on it and revise it. So it's great when Mel and I agree. I also wanted to say, in response to Debbie, who has concerns about community organization involvement, I count quite a few community organizations here tonight. I see Pine Ridge, I see Thousand Friends, I see PGCC, I see Colonial Village, I see Sudbrook Park. I think there's actually a good attendance and, a robust attendance from the communities also, especially considering how much, strife there's been, which has not been conducive. And I forgot the Pikesville Armory Foundation, which is another major stakeholder that's here tonight. There are quite a few organizations here tonight. So I just want to dispel that misimpression that the organizations aren't involved and don't have skin in the game. And I think, considering all of the input, that I agree with Mel, and I could, I didn't make the motion, but I seconded it, but I think I or Lynn are in a position to, let me just see the language, to, hold on, to close. I guess it's really not to close the discussion and vote, but to table it and return it to the subcommittee is what I would suggest. And I'm not saying we have to do it this minute. I think if there are, because I don't know Robert's rules well, but if there are other people, I see their hands up, who want to express their ideas before we take it back to the committee to work on it, I think it would be worth taking a few more minutes to hear what Neville has to say and Jaren has to say. I see their hands up, and then to table it and let the org committee go back to work on it.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. I do agree that we should, go through the last 2 hands that we have raised. So, Jaren, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, thanks. I think I liked what Shelley said earlier, and kind of gave me an idea that I don't know that anybody's raised yet, but I see sort of potential for a compromise here where everyone gets to contribute. And I think the value of those representing organizations is important to take into consideration because they're representing many, many people. Yet there are people like myself who aren't representing any organizations, probably would like to contribute in the vote as well. I think that one idea for a compromise there is to just have sort of an at-large group where those who are individual contributors basically just group together and then have like a subvote and then just majority rules there. And then however, that large group of individuals votes gets counted as a, as a single vote, just like an organization gets counted as an individual vote, and therefore that group is larger in number, and basically that one vote counts has more weight. So
Thank you, Darren.
Yep.
Neville, if you want to go ahead.
Idea of at large is sound. There are two ways that we could proceed on this. We could either make an amendment to the existing motion, or if we want to table the motion, I'd like to propose, or reject the motion, or vote on the motion. I'd like to propose another motion. And I don't know if this would be the appropriate time to do so, but I'd like to be allowed to make the following motion. That the voting members of the APC be the list of representatives of the organizations as amended. And I'll discuss the as amended clause later. Plus those who have demonstrated by their attendance and participation not only a strong interest in Pikesville revitalization, but by their requesting to be allowed to have a vote, a commitment to continue to participate and attend future meetings. Representatives of the business interests of the CBD are also encouraged to request a vote if they are willing to participate in further activities. My reason for adding these two groups of people at large is that we have the communities from outside the Reisterstown Road area. In other words, I fully concur that organizations that are physically located along Reisterstown Road should definitely have full voting capability. But we've got a situation in which we've got organizations that are not on Reisterstown Road that are in the groups involved. And I'm a little bit puzzled as to why they should be in the voting structure. So that would be part of the amendment, because I'm just wondering a little bit why a group like Dumbarton Stevenson is not only represented by PGCC, but it also has a separate vote, and they are not located along Reisterstown Road at all. So I'm just puzzled by that. So that's a minor detail. But the important thing is that those people who have contributed, those who feel very strongly on this Pikesville revitalization, I think they are entitled to a vote on this because they are putting their heart and soul into this process. They are basically going to make the difference between this being successful and this being just another one of those things that eventually die by the wayside. We don't want that to happen. We want to encourage the volunteers who are active in this area and are willing to be active. By giving them a vote, you are asking them for a commitment that they will continue to do this work. So I would like to suggest the motion that I mentioned, and I'd like to see if there is interest in that, perhaps with amendments to it. But I'd like to definitely see more than this group of representative associations than the one that was recommended in the recommendation. I think that is just too narrow, and I think it has the dire concern from my perspective that it may actually cause this to die if we don't have the active people representative in a voting fashion. And I'd like to see a vote so that we can actually vote on, know who is going to vote on this thing, so we can move ahead, so that we can actually take these proposals that have come up with. All sorts of proposals have been suggested. We need to be able to vote and move along. If this goes back to the planning committee for another 5 or 6 weeks, I just don't see where this is going to, it's just going to die. I'm just very concerned. I think we need to discuss this, vote on it, end it, and move ahead. I feel this very, very strongly.
Thank you, Neville. I do believe we're still in the discussion of the original motion that was presented. So if we can go through the hands that are raised here, and if we see that it's tabled and you want to present your motion, that's fine. If we want to decide to go in another direction, we can do that too. So if you don't mind, I'll finish going through the raised hands here, and then we'll see where we're at, and we can double back to you if you still want to formally present your motion. So Jaren, I saw your hand next. We'll then go to Mel, Tom, and Ruth.
Just a quick point back to Neville, who, Neville, you were asking why organizations who aren't physically adjacent to Reisterstown Road. I think it's important to consider the communities that Reisterstown Road and downtown Pikesville serves as a community, or has the potential at least to serve as a community center, right? I don't live adjacent to Reisterstown Road, but still feel that that's the closest like downtown to where I live. So I just think that this is just my thoughts directly to your question. Even if they're not physically adjacent, the point of Pikesville being a downtown is that it'll be a destination. And so presumably people have to come from someplace, and those places should have a say as well. So that's all.
Thank you, Jaren. Mel, go ahead.
To me, viewing everybody's comments, if this motion were to go forward for a vote, it'd be voted down. I don't want that to happen because it creates a lot of difficulties. It is better, I think, and more collegial to withdraw this motion. We could have a vote on tabling it. That also would not be the collegial thing to do. I think it's much better. Larry, you are the sponsor. I hate to use legislative jargon, but if you're not the sponsor, if you're not the mover of the motion, which you could have been, you are the sponsor. Your committee is the sponsor. You can withdraw that proposal for further study. And Neville, I can tell you my sense of things is this will not get delayed. As a matter of fact, it probably, once withdrawn and once taken back for adjustment, the subcommittee could make that new adjustment, considering all the input that you've just received, and make it and have the vote done electronically. And so by the next meeting of the PrAP committee, this would be a settled issue. I'm convinced that would happen. I urge this to be withdrawn. I am glad to agree with Ruth. Trust me, Ruth, I am glad to agree with you. We certainly have had disagreements, as many people do, and that's what happens. But this one we are in agreement for. So I would suggest it be withdrawn. And again, lacking a better description for adjustments and further study, and to make a recommendation as soon as possible by the subcommittee to the full committee to vote. As Alex has outlined it, all of us have a vote on who gets to vote. And that was a very wise decision by Alex. And so I think we should follow through on that and put this issue aside. I think the subcommittee has the equipment to come up with a recommendation that matches up with much of the input that they have received. And I am convinced they could come up with a proposal that will be approved. This one most likely would not.
Thank you, Mel. Tom, go ahead, and then we'll go to Ruth, and we can see where we're at.
I'm going to be quick. Let me first second Jaren's comment that the Central Business District and Pikesville as a community extends beyond those communities that simply border or are totally adjacent to Reisterstown Road. I think communities in the area know who they are and are impacted by what happens with downtown Pikesville, and or if you could call it downtown, and how it is improved. And I think I need to agree with Mel that the most expeditious way forward is to, number one, hopefully to have the subcommittee have heard the comments, withdraw the motion, and go back and take the comments into consideration and prepare a second draft of their proposal. If they do take the comments in good faith, and I think they were made in good faith by everybody here, then I think we can reach a reasonable conclusion very, very quickly. This is not something to battle over and have and take scalps over. That's all.
Thank you, Tom. And go ahead, Ruth. Just 1 second, you're not unmuted.
You're muted.
I don't know if this will close this or not, but I first want to say I hope this isn't the only kumbaya moment that Mel and I are able to have. It's been, it's an ongoing discussion, and I really appreciate everyone listening respectfully to everyone else's, ideas and points of view. And if I can be the one to propose to table it, or Lynn can, since she made the motion, or Larry can, since he is the chair of the subcommittee, I agree with Mel, and I think with Tom, that would be the most productive and collegial way to move forward. So I'm proposing to table it, but if that's not exactly correct, then I hope whoever it should do it will do it.
I'm not very familiar with Robert's Rules of Order. If the seconder, can the seconder table it?
As far as I know.
Seconder.
Go ahead, Larry.
As far as I understand it, and I could be wrong, but I thought only the excuse me, I thought only the person that made the motion could request a motion to withdraw it, and then the committee would vote on it.
Well, we're not
Right.
requesting that it be withdrawn. We're requesting that it be tabled and discussed within that committee further, and taking all of this feedback into consideration. I think that's a little different than with.
Okay. I'm seeing here that Ruth, it sounds like you can withdraw your second, and if someone else can second, but if not, then it dies there. Or Lynn, if you want to go ahead, I see your hand is raised. I'm sorry.
I can, if this speeds the process along, I'm happy to withdraw my motion or say that I'd like to table it. I'm not, I'm fine with that, because, we did, as a subcommittee, come up with some multiple alternatives similar to what was discussed this evening. And we have a meeting this Thursday, right? Yeah, we have a meeting this Thursday, so I don't see why we can't talk about this then. So I table my motion.
Okay. Mel, your hand is still raised. I don't know if you wanted to say something there. Oh, 1 second, you're on mute. It won't be long. Go
It's,
ahead.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's basically, thank you, Lynn. That was very gracious, and it works to help the process along. And that does it. It is sent back to the subcommittee for reconsideration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Like I said, I was looking forward to hearing from you all, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do that, especially in a succinct and respectful way. So that was great. We have a half hour left. I'm going to throw this out there. I feel like this was a long discussion. And this is on Zoom on a Monday evening. So I do feel like we could end the meeting here, just so we don't have to go to the worksheets. I want to be able to give them the time that they deserve, and give the organization subcommittee the opportunity to meet on Thursday morning, to reconvene, and to come up with an alternative recommendation to bring forward to this whole committee. I just want to take a look really quickly. So the next meeting date that I'm suggesting is December 12th. So we're sticking to the Monday evening format, 6:30 to 8. You can let me know by email if that doesn't work for you, but that's what we're going with for now. And like I said, we're going to reconvene as an organization subcommittee on Thursday morning to discuss all this. I see a couple hands, so maybe we can take those, and if everyone's ready to end the meeting for tonight, we can go ahead and do that. So Mel, Tom, Neville, Kristen. So let's start with Mel. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, you did a great job of shepherding us. Just a point of clarification. I think I'm glad to see it's going back, and I think it'll be sincerely received by the subcommittee to work on this sincerely based on the input. Could we do that vote? Let's assume that in a matter of a few days, the subcommittee comes up with a recommendation that they think is good. Could we do the vote on that recommendation electronically? You'll have it in writing. The subcommittee proposes XYZ as a proposal for the structure. And could we do that vote electronically so that on December the 12th, assuming that's the next meeting, we have a structure of voting?
I don't know if I can make that decision myself.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a bad suggestion, but I think maybe that's something that we can talk about with the organization subcommittee on Thursday morning, just to outline what that would look like if we do want to move forward with that, and if not, what it would look like at the meeting and how we can do it so it kind of, doesn't take up the whole meeting the way it did today, especially if we see that, not everyone needs to have a lengthy discussion about it. But thank you for your suggestion, Mel. Tom, you can go ahead.
I would like to request the subcommittee to please notify all the committee members of what they are proposing to propose. I think it is appropriate for us to be sufficiently collegial that if they cook up a new proposal, that we get to taste it with a simple comment. Please comment in 48 hours if this gives you a tremendous amount of headache. I would really prefer to have a proposal in front of me or in front of us on the 12th. And no, I'm not necessarily in favor of doing this electronically. That a proposal comes forth which will get overwhelming support. And the way to get that overwhelming support is to give us a taste of what it is that you are proposing and invite response, and hopefully we can then make our input and be heard. And I would like to ask the same if we are going to have a discussion on the worksheets, to have the worksheets ahead of a meeting. Zoom meetings are not conducive to descriptive discussion. So if we have something in front of us in writing, clear, then we can have a discussion. Stuff that comes at us without pre-work isn't going to work. That's it. And Alex, thank you very much for a job well done.
Thank you,
Wasn't so simple.
Tom. Thank you. Neville, you can go ahead.
That we actually, the discussion that has been mentioned from the organization committee, I think is fine to come up with a proposal. But I think the end result needs to be a motion, so that at the next meeting, we can just go in the meeting with a motion and say, let's vote on it, get it over with in 5 or 10 minutes, and put it to bed. The other thing is I've sent a copy of the motion that I mentioned earlier to the, I think the group, I'm not sure who was on the 17 list of people who got it, but I just put a copy of that there, and I'd appreciate it if that could be considered by the organization committee. And then at the next meeting that we actually get to vote on a motion, make an amendment if we need to, vote on it and get it done and move ahead.
Thank you, Neville. Go to Kristen, then Larry, then Howard. Kristen, go ahead.
Thank you. First, thank you, Alex. This is, I know we're a lively group and it's a lot to wrangle us together, but I really appreciate it that you're sticking with us and patient with us as well. Yes, I think everyone agrees we really want to get this going, and it's a good idea to get things settled. If we can get it settled on Thursday, and then so when the next time we come together, we can just vote and move on. My next question is the timeline. Do you have a timeline for next steps? I know that the 12th, theoretically, or our goal is to each chair to go through and our presentation for our project. What's the next? Is there a timeline after that?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to see past the vote for a little bit, just because that just felt like the big hurdle that we needed to get to. But with the worksheets being, on this evening's agenda, that's certainly where we want to go next. And so, the organization subcommittee does have the rubric that was put together to grade the worksheets. What we've done so far is we had like a preliminary discussion basically where we reviewed the worksheets, but we have not graded them or come up with any kind of recommendation when it comes to the worksheets. I would love for that to happen before the end of the year. I don't know if that's too ambitious. If not, it'll be priority number 1 for January 2023. But that's where I see us going generally, based on the discussions that we've had with the committee and the organization subcommittee as well, within the next few weeks. Thanks for your question, Kristen. Larry, you can go ahead.
So just quickly, because I know we're way over past time, but I want to welcome anybody that'd like to attend the next organization subcommittee, and I hope I'm not out of order with our subcommittee on this, but we would love to have anybody that wants to attend and participate in that discussion to attend it. So just let me or Alex know, and we can send you an invite. I'm not suggesting long-term commitment, but I think we could get more work done more quickly if the different viewpoints were part of that discussion. But either way, we'll do that. And Tom, I think that makes a lot of sense to send that out for comments as soon as we have a recommendation, also having a motion ready to go. And also I agree with having it in person, because if there is any discussion after the motion's made and seconded, it'd be a lot easier than trying to do it via email. And I'll add my thanks, Alex, for facilitating the meeting impeccably.
Thanks, Larry. Howard, you can go ahead.
Just wanted to very briefly say I don't think we should vote on the committee's recommendation electronically. I think there needs to be discussion on the motion, whatever its recommendation is. It will be a motion. I see it's wishful thinking, Neville, that it's going to be over in 5 or 10 minutes. I see a potential problem. I hope the subcommittee will consider how we're going to vote on the individual members who are going to have voting rights. That can take a lot of time to consider that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Howard. And Jack, if you want to go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
Couple of things real quick, and I've absorbed all of this. I think number one, I'd like to just echo what Jaron said earlier in his first comments, that we're a child of the County Department of Planning, and I think it's really important that planning's vision is included in all of this in terms of what is the expectation from the county, what is the expectation of the group from the county as well, and that factors into voting rights and organization and everything else. I believe that there are 20-some people on the call tonight. I don't know how many people were originally invited to this, but we don't know who's on the committee itself. The other thing I'd like to mention is that somebody had mentioned about an email string that was going around. I think there are email strings that are going around that some of us are on and some of us are not on. So they're not going out to the entire committee. So there apparently are these minor or mini conversations that are happening that all of us don't know about. So if we could do something to communicate to the whole group rather than subgroups, it would be a big help in us moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Jack, your hand was the last one that I saw raised. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything before we end this meeting. If not, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, for, like I said, being respectful, cordial, and, just sharing your ideas and your thoughts on this. It was really helpful for me, and I'm sure for everyone else, to hear you. We were used to just hearing everything via email, so it was nice to hear all your voices on this. So just to remind everyone that for now, the next committee meeting is December 12th, which is a Monday, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. The organization subcommittee is meeting this Thursday morning, and we plan to get back to you with an alternate recommendation for the voting members. So until then, I wish you a very good rest of your evening and a great week. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.